HarperCollins presents The Sunday Times Investigates, Reporting That Made History. Edited by Madeleine Spence. Read by Malk Williams. Introduction. It was the January of the Big Freeze. The Beatles were poised to release their second single, and Cliff Richard's new film, Summer Holiday, was premiering at Leicester Square in London. Stepping out of the neatly polished vintage Bristol convertible into the ice-cold morning were three smartly dressed young men in their late 20s. "We've been taken over by a bunch of teddy boys," the newspaper's foreign editor was heard to remark haughtily as he peered from the window to see the three new recruits enter the multi-storey Thompson House building on Gray's Inn Road. The men were taken through the smoke-filled Sunday Times newsroom and shown their small broom-cupboard office at the back of the editorial floor. They were there to break the mould, and within months they would pioneer a new form of journalism, which would be so successful that it would inspire generations of investigative reporters for decades to come. The date was Tuesday, January the 8th, 1963, and the Sunday Times was in a period of transformation and innovation under the editorship of Dennis Hamilton, a former lieutenant colonel who had won medals for bravery in the Second World War. The effects of post-war paper rationing were finally over, and newspapers were fast gaining excess pages as they competed for new readers and advertisers. Many of the features that are so familiar in the modern-day Sunday Times were introduced at around that time. A new magazine colour supplement was added, followed by a standalone business section, but there was still plenty of space to fill as the newspaper expanded. With this in mind, a few weeks earlier, Hamilton had approached Clive Irving, the 29-year-old editor of Topic magazine, who had just returned from covering the Cuban Missile Crisis in New York. The magazine had been set up as a British version of Newsweek, and Irving had been experimenting with a new style of long-form narrative journalism. But the project had been given no time to succeed because its publishers ran out of money and were forced to close down the magazine. After just 10 weeks as editor, Irving was out of a job. "We were sitting dejected in the office, and I got this call from Dennis Hamilton," he recounts, "and he said, 'I like what you have been doing. Come here and do it for us, and bring the two best people with you.' I did. So he turned up on that chilly Tuesday morning with his two colleagues from the ill-fated Topic, Jeremy Wallington and Ron Hall, then aged 27 and 28. This was the first Sunday Times Insight team. The trio were a good fit, with complementary skills and attributes. Irving, an affable Londoner who had worked on the Express and the Observer, was a gifted writer who took charge as the team's editor. Hall, a Sheffield builder's son who had studied maths at Cambridge University, added the intellectual ballast and rigour. He was a punctilious checker of Irving's copy, and would pore over the typewritten script with his red pen, questioning minute details and assertions. The third member, Wallington, was a former grammar school boy from High Wycombe, who was the owner of the Bristol convertible. Good-looking and personable, with a sharp dress sense, Wallington would be dispatched to use his charm with interview subjects. One of their first tasks was to come up with a name for the team. Insight was their first idea, but it was almost rejected. When Irving first suggested it, the newspaper's lawyer pointed out that there was already a medical specialist publication of that name. But the second suggestion, Scrutiny, was forcefully rejected by Hall because it reminded him of the word scrotum. So, lacking any further inspiration, they persuaded the lawyer that it would be fine to use Insight. Such was the low-tech technology at the time, Irving actually hand-drew the first white-on-black Insight logo, which was then cut into a printer's block. The same hand-drawn logo went on to appear in the newspaper for 4 decades. Initially, Insight wasn't really an investigation team at all.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?